If I told you that pilots once bought a 160-knot airplane for the price of a tired trainer, you'd probably assume there was a catch. But in the early 1990s, thousands of pilots looked at the Lancair 235 and thought it was a simple step up. It looked manageable, affordable, and familiar. And that belief is exactly where everything started to go wrong. In the early 1990s, the Lancair 235 looked like a loophole in aviation economics. For around $20,000, you could build a sleek, composite Homebuilt that cruised up to 160 knots or more. Not theoretically. Not downhill with a tailwind. Real cruise speeds that embarrassed certified aircraft costing 4 or 5 times as much. If you were a private pilot reading magazines back then, this airplane didn't just catch your eye, it rewired your expectations. Because for the price of a tired, used Cessna 150, you were looking at something that looked like it belonged on a fighter ramp. And here's where it really hooked people. The engine wasn't huge. That mattered. A lot of pilots saw the relatively small power plant and immediately relaxed. Small engine means manageable, right? Combine that with the word Homebuilt, and suddenly the airplane felt approachable. Almost friendly. I want you to be honest with yourself here. If you'd spent years flying trainers and someone showed you a fast, modern airplane that didn't look intimidating on paper, wouldn't you think the same thing? Many pilots did. They saw it as a simple step up, a clean, efficient machine that just happened to be faster, something you could grow into. And that's the trap. Because the Lancair didn't behave like anything most of its buyers had flown before. It wasn't forgiving, it wasn't slow to react, and it didn't wait for you to catch up. What looked like an incredible bargain was actually an entry ticket into a completely different performance category. So once pilots were hooked by the price and the promise, the real danger wasn't the airplane itself. It was what people thought they were buying when they signed up. Once the Lancair 235 started showing up on airfields, a very specific mindset followed it. Pilots didn't approach it like a high-performance machine. They approached it like a slightly sharper trainer. You hear the same assumptions come up again and again. Small engine equals manageable. Homebuilt equals simple. Composite kit equals modern, but not demanding. And maybe the most dangerous assumption of all was this one. This is just a logical step up from what I already fly. If you're watching this and you've ever thought, I've got a few hundred hours, I'll figure it out, you can probably see where this is going. The Lancair didn't look intimidating. It didn't sound intimidating. And compared to big certified performance airplanes, it felt accessible. That accessibility lowered people's guard. Pilots brought trainer habits with them. They planned approaches late. They expected the airplane to bleed speed when power came out. They assumed they could tighten up a turn in the pattern without consequences. In slower airplanes, those habits often go unpunished. The airplane talks to you, it mushes, it gives you time. The Lancair didn't. And here's the part many pilots didn't appreciate until it was too late. The airplane wasn't going to adapt to them. They had to adapt to it, immediately. If you're stepping into a machine that cruises above 160 knots, your margin for casual flying disappears. Energy management becomes non-negotiable. Precision stops being optional. Most pilots didn't realize that at first. They thought they were buying speed on a budget. What they actually bought was responsibility they weren't prepared for. And the gap between those two expectations is where the accidents started to stack up, and speed was to blame. Here's where the Lancair 235 separated expectation from reality. The airplane wasn't dangerous because it was unstable or poorly designed. It was dangerous because it was fast, clean, and brutally honest about energy. Approach speeds were far higher than anything most owners had trained in. You weren't trundling down finals at trainer speeds with power controlling everything. You were managing real kinetic energy, and the airplane did not want to give it back to you. If you came in fast, it stayed fast. If you pulled power late, the sink rate changed quickly. The Lancair didn't bleed speed the way draggy trainers do. It expected you to arrive on speed, on profile, and already thinking ahead. And stalls were abrupt. There wasn't a long buffer. The airplane went from flying to not flying quickly, especially if you were uncoordinated or pulling while turning. For pilots used to lots of warning, that transition was shocking. I want you to picture this. You're in the pattern. You're slightly high, slightly fast, and trying to fix it the way you always have. A little tighter bank, a little back pressure. In a trainer, you might get away with it. In the Lancair, that combination eats your margin instantly. The airplane didn't care about your habits or your confidence. It only cared about physics. If you flew it precisely, it behaved exactly as designed, but it didn't tolerate casual corrections or last-second fixes. And that's the point where many pilots realized too late that this wasn't a faster version of what they knew. It was a different class of flying altogether. A striking number of Lancair 235 accidents occurred turning from base to final. That alone should make you pause, because this is already the most dangerous phase of flight in any airplane. Low altitude, low airspeed, high workload. The Lancair simply removed the remaining safety net. Here's the typical setup. A pilot turns base a little high or a little fast. Instead of going around, they do what they've done 100 times in trainers. They tighten the turn. They pull a bit of back pressure. They try to salvage the approach. In a Cessna 150 or 172, the airplane usually warns you. It mushes. It talks. It gives you time to realize you're asking for too much. The Lancair doesn't. In a bank, stall speed rises. Combine that with reduced airspeed, a clean airframe, and even slight uncoordination, and the margin disappears instantly. The stall, when it arrives, is abrupt, and at pattern altitude, there is no room to recover. These weren't reckless pilots doing aerobatics close to the ground. Many were simply flying the pattern the way they always had, using habits that worked just fine in slower, dirtier airplanes. The Lancair punished those habits. If you're watching this and thinking, I've tightened up base to final before, that's exactly the point. The airplane didn't care why you did it. It only cared about physics. At this point, it's tempting to blame the airplane. But if you slow down and look at what was really happening, the picture gets a lot more uncomfortable. This is the part where the story usually gets simplified, and incorrectly. It's easy to look at the accident numbers and conclude that the Lancair 235 was flawed or unsafe by design, but that conclusion doesn't really hold up under scrutiny. Lancair didn't design a trainer. They designed a high-performance experimental aircraft, and they were fairly open about that. The airplane did exactly what it was supposed to do when flown within its envelope. It was fast, efficient, and remarkably capable for its size and cost. The real problem was how many pilots approached it with the wrong mindset. A lot of owners treated the Lancair as a step up instead of a step across. They brought habits from slower airplanes into a machine that demanded precision from the first minute. Late corrections, casual approaches, tightening turns instead of going around. All of those things had worked before. The Lancair simply refused to tolerate them. That doesn't make it evil. It makes it honest. If you flew the numbers, planned early, and respected the energy state, the airplane behaved predictably, but it didn't protect you from yourself. And many pilots weren't used to flying something that required that level of discipline on every single flight. There's also the experimental factor. Transition training varied wildly. Some pilots got excellent instruction. Others essentially taught themselves. That inconsistency mattered in an airplane with such narrow margins. So when accidents happened, it wasn't because the Lancair betrayed its pilots. It was because it exposed gaps in preparation and expectation. And once those early accidents started stacking up, the reputation took on a life of its own. Once the Lancair 235 started showing up in accident reports, the narrative formed quickly. And in general aviation, narratives are sticky. They spread faster than context and last longer than facts. The label became simple: dangerous, Homebuilt. And once an airplane gets that tag, every incident reinforces it, even when the details don't line up with the headline. Pilots stopped talking about how the airplane was being flown and started talking about what it was. The nuance disappeared. It didn't matter that many crashes shared the same profile: low altitude, turning, poorly managed energy. The airplane itself became the villain. That reputation had real consequences. Insurance premiums climbed. Instructors became hesitant to offer transition training. Flight schools and mentors quietly steered pilots away from it. Even pilots who would have flown the Lancair well started second-guessing themselves. And here's the irony: the people most affected by the reputation were often the ones who would have been safest in it. Disciplined pilots, with strong planning habits and respect for speed, backed away. Meanwhile, the myth that it was just a fast little kit plane lingered in the background. The result was a feedback loop. Fewer experienced pilots flying them regularly, less shared knowledge, more isolated ownership, and when something did go wrong, it reinforced the same story all over again. The Lancair didn't just earn a reputation, it got trapped inside one. And this is where the story stops being about a single airplane and starts turning into a lesson the entire general aviation world still struggles with. When you step back from the accident numbers and the reputation, the Lancair 235 ends up telling a much more uncomfortable story about pilots than about airplanes. The Lancair didn't fail because it was unsafe. It failed because it exposed a dangerous assumption in general aviation that performance scales gently, that if you move up gradually, the airplane will keep covering for you while you learn. It doesn't. Speed compresses everything. Time, distance, decision-making. A mistake that costs you 5 seconds in a trainer can cost you your life in a clean, fast airplane. The Lancair simply made that reality impossible to ignore. For pilots who respected that, who planned early, flew disciplined approaches, and treated energy management as non-negotiable, the airplane worked exactly as advertised. It was efficient, thrilling, and honest. It rewarded preparation and punished improvisation. But many pilots didn't want that kind of relationship with their airplane. They wanted something exciting without demanding a complete mindset shift. And the Lancair refused to be that. If you're watching this and thinking, that wouldn't be me, pause for a second. Almost every pilot who crashed one thought the same thing. Confidence wasn't the problem. Habit was. The real lesson of the Lancair 235 is simple and still relevant. Cheap speed is never actually cheap. You always pay for it somewhere, either in training, discipline, or consequences. The Lancair didn't seduce pilots because it lied. It seduced them because they underestimated what they were stepping into. And aviation history is full of airplanes like that. So, the Lancair 235 shows how fast good intentions can turn unforgiving. If this breakdown changed how you think about speed and step-ups, subscribe now, because these lessons matter before the mistake happens. And comment below, was the Lancair misunderstood, or was it always too much airplane for its buyers?